Hi everyone, it's Leela with Miss Kiss Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today's tumbler tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created this galaxy themed glittered V-shaped tumbler. Like always, all of my materials will be listed in my description below, including some direct links and some coupon codes for y'all to check out. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with this tutorial. I'm using a 30-ounce skinny from Makerflow Crafts, and I'm sanding that down with the 180 grit sanding block, and then I wipe it down with 91% alcohol. I do this for all of my tumblers. I don't spray paint this tumbler. I go right into using this printed vinyl. This vinyl is from the Vinyl Cottage, and I just fold this vinyl right in half. These vinyl prints are 12 by 12, and using these vinyl prints on the 30-ounce skinny works perfectly because there's no measuring. So I fold it in half, and then I just cut it with my scissors. If you are using a smaller tumbler, I know there's a lot of templates on Etsy for the V-shaped tumblers, so check out Etsy to get that file to get the exact cuts. And then I'm using the hinge method to apply that vinyl onto the tumbler. I cut off a little piece of the backing. I place the backing on the bottom of the tumbler, not worrying if it's straight or not. If it goes over the edge, that's okay. And then I remove that backing slowly and I press down with my hand onto that tumbler. I'm mainly focusing on getting that vinyl stuck to the tumbler. I'm not worrying about if it is straight or anything like that. I just want to avoid having any bubbles placed on the vinyl or onto the tumbler. And then I cut off that backing to make it easier. I do not cut that vinyl at all. I just let those two pieces overlap one another like so, and you can see it turned out perfect. And now it's time to remove or cut the bottom of the tumbler where the vinyl is placed. I do that by using my cup edging tool, and I place that tumbler against its razor blade, and I just press very hard, and I go around the tumbler twice, and then I peel off any of that excess vinyl on the bottom. If you want, you can leave the vinyl on the tumbler, or you can add a piece of vinyl on the bottom, but I always leave my bottoms blank for these tumblers. And it's easy as that. Once I'm finished with that step, I'm going in with adding my glitter to my tumbler. I'm using Bashful from Glitter Heart Co. And then I'm using my white from Pop of Color for that adhesive. So what I first do, since that glitter is a little bit transparent, I go around the silver part of the tumbler, so the part of the tumbler that does not have any vinyl on it, and I do one coat of the paint. So this is just adding that base, just in case some of that pink glitter doesn't adhere all the way on the tumbler. I'd rather have a white base sticking up or another color base than stainless steel. So I first apply all of my paint in that area, going very slowly, mainly just focusing on getting a full covered area. I let that dry. It takes about 20 to 25 minutes, and then I go in with a second coat of my paint. And once that paint is dry on the tumbler, I'm going in with my second coat of Pop of Color. Again, if you want to use another color paint, go ahead and use another color paint. You do not have to use Pop of Color. You can always use Mod Podge and add some pink inside of the Mod Podge, and it works perfectly. It's the same process as well. So I'm going in with my second coat, and I'm applying a thicker coat of the paint because I don't want the paint to dry. Again, I'm using this paint as adhesive for that glitter. So I want to make sure that this paint is nice and wet whenever I add that glitter to the tumbler, so that glitter can adhere to that paint and stick to the tumbler. Make sure you get all those nooks and crannies with that paintbrush. And then once all that paint is applied to that area, you're going to just apply all of that glitter on the tumbler. And this glitter is so pretty. It's like a pinkish orangish, and it just goes really well with this vinyl. You want to make sure that you are getting a fully covered area. Make sure you cover every single spot with that glitter. And once you added your glitter to the tumbler, if you notice that there's some areas that you may have missed or the paint may have just dried too quickly, that's okay. Go back in with your paintbrush and just fan out some paint onto the tumbler in those areas and just spot treat those areas. So I'm just fanning out. I'm not clumping that paint in those areas. I'm trying to add as little as paint as I can so it's not very clumpy and thick. And then I apply that glitter over that wet paint and just spot treat those areas. And don't worry about making that line where the vinyl meets the glitter perfectly, because we're going to come in and add some decals to those areas, so that line's going to get cleaned up here at the end. And once all of that glitter is applied to the area, I'm going in with my makeup brush and I'm wiping away any of that excess glitter that may have been placed on the areas where there wasn't any adhesive. So make sure you wipe it away very well. The good thing about this vinyl is if you don't wipe away all the glitter, you're not going to be able to see it that well. So it's like a good little trick here. So now I'm going to seal this vinyl or the glitter in, and I'm spraying this with my Krylon Crystal Clear acrylic coating. I know this says clear glaze, but I picked up the wrong one. And whenever you do spray that on the tumbler, you can spray that vinyl area. It's not going to ruin the vinyl. So I just spray all over the tumbler, spraying about 2 coats of nice generous coats all around the tumbler. I let that dry for about 20 minutes and then I go in with my first coat of epoxy. So this coat of epoxy, I am using 30 milliliters of epoxy. That's 15 mLs part A and 15 mLs part B, totaling 30 milliliters of epoxy. I did epoxy and glitter another tumbler. You can see up top there. That glitter is a lot thicker, so I'm using about 35 to 40 milliliters of epoxy. Do keep in mind whenever you are using thicker or more chunky glitter, you have to use more epoxy than if you are epoxying a tumbler with the fine glitter. I then let that epoxy and tumbler spin on the cup turner, and then I let it dry and cure before moving on to the next steps of this tutorial. And once my epoxy was cured on my tumblers, I went in with my X-Acto knife and I trimmed any of that excess epoxy that may have been on the rim. And then I took an 180 grit sanding block and I sanded away that rim to smooth out the rim of the tumblers. And then I took my 180 grit sanding block and I sanded away any of those stubborn pieces of glitter that may have been peeking through that epoxy. And then I took a 220 grit sanding block and then I sanded away some of those finer pieces of epoxy that may have been sticking up. Keep in mind that you do have a coat of glitter underneath this epoxy, so make sure you're not sanding too hard or you will sand away your glitter. And once all of my sanding was complete, I took my 91% alcohol and I wiped away any of that excess oil or sanding dust that may have been placed on my tumblers. And now to add the decals on my tumblers, I'm using 2 rectangle sizes. I'm using a thicker rectangle, which is 0.80 in width, and then a thinner rectangle, which is 0.20 in width. I did create these rectangles on Cricut Design Space. I added a rectangle to Cricut Design Space, and then I sized the rectangle to the specific shape. I'm first applying the thicker rectangle on the tumbler. You can see how I'm just applying it on the tumbler, as easy as that, just going along those lines, and then taking an X-Acto knife and just cutting those excess pieces of rectangle with my X-Acto knife. And then I keep the pieces of rectangles just in case I need them in the future. And then now I'm going in with the thinner rectangle and I'm applying that right on top of the thicker rectangle, just going down along the tumbler and letting it match up as best as I can. Both of these colors of vinyl are from the Vinyl Cottage. Again, they will be linked in my description below, including a direct link and a coupon code for y'all to use. And remember, I do these videos out of inspiration or for y'all to be inspired. So do your tumblers the way that you want them to be done. Apply your rectangles or vinyl in the ways that you want them to be done. So if you don't want your vinyl to wrap all the way towards the bottom of the tumbler, go ahead and just cut that piece off and just make a regular V-shaped tumbler. Or like this one, I decided to leave that piece of vinyl up top. You don't have to leave that up top. Remember, these videos are inspirations, and no matter what you create, it's going to be beautiful. And once my rectangles were placed on the tumbler, I found a nice file from Etsy that will be linked in my description, and I offsetted it. I thought this would look beautiful for these tumblers. So I place the backing on the table, and I always tape down my backing because whenever you apply your top offset on your bottom offset, that bottom offset backing ends up just lifting and then going on your transfer tape, and it doesn't allow you to get a nice and even offset. So I hope that makes sense. So all I do is I tape that down and then I remove the tape. In this case, the tape didn't get removed, so I just cut the tape off, and then it's a very easy offset. Again, I'm taping it down, applying that top layer offset on the bottom, and then removing that offset or that transfer tape from the tape, and you could see that that offset doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm applying both of those decals to the tumbler. I wanted to add an all pink tumbler, so this looked cute. And then I added the purple decal to my purple tumbler. And once all of my vinyl was placed on the tumbler, I went in with my Quick Coat from CC DIY. This is a sealer that you apply to decals. So whenever I go to apply my epoxy, my decals won't lift. This stuff has come in handy, and I place this on all of my decals after applying my decals to the tumbler. I let this dry for about 20 to 25 minutes, and I will also have this linked in my description below. And now it's time to apply my epoxy. I first applied 20 milliliters of epoxy per each tumbler. So that's 10 part A and 10 part B on each tumbler. I then allowed that epoxy to dry on the cup turner. And since there was so many decals and so much layering, I had to go in with a second coat of epoxy once the first coat of epoxy was dry. So my final coat of epoxy was about 10 to 15 milliliters of epoxy per tumbler. So I added 2 coats of epoxy to this tumbler. The first coat, let that cure, and then the second coat just to get that nice and smooth tumbler. And once that final coat of epoxy was cured on my tumblers, I took my X-Acto knife for the final time, and then I X-Acto knife that rim of the tumbler, making sure I get a nice and clean rim. Once I was finished with the rim, I clean up the inside and my tumblers are good to go. Look how amazing and how beautiful these tumblers are. Let me know which one you like better. If you guys know my favorite color, you guys know which one is my favorite. And if you guys are interested in purchasing some tumblers, please check me out on Facebook at Miss Kiss Creations. I have plenty of ready to sell tumblers. And don't forget that I am on Instagram and TikTok. If you guys did enjoy this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tumbler and craft videos. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see y'all next time.